Can I sell you a candy, sir? He looked at her and said, from today, you live with me. If you love emotional, unforgettable stories that stay with you, don't forget to like and subscribe. The basket trembled in Elena's hands as she stared up at the towering iron gates. Beyond them, a mansion stretched across manicured lawns like something from a movie, all marble columns and gleaming windows that caught the afternoon sun. Her daughter Maya shifted against her hip, tiny fingers clutching a half-eaten candy wrapper. "Mama, why are we here?" Maya whispered. Elena's throat tightened. Because the rent was due tomorrow. Because the grocery money had gone to Maya's medicine last week. Because pride was a luxury she couldn't afford anymore. She pressed the brass intercom button. Nothing. Then footsteps echoed across stone, growing louder, more purposeful. The massive oak door swung open with surprising silence. A man filled the doorway. Tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a crisp white shirt that probably cost more than Elena made in a month. His dark hair was perfectly styled, his jaw clean-shaven. Everything about him screamed wealth and authority. Obviously the mansion's butler, the kind who'd worked for rich families so long he'd absorbed their arrogance. Elena straightened her spine. She'd dealt with condescending staff before. "Can I sell you a candy, sir?" she asked, lifting her basket slightly. "They're handmade. Very fresh." The man didn't answer immediately. His eyes, steel gray and unervingly direct, moved from her face to Maya, then to the basket of colorful wrapped sweets. Something shifted in his expression. Not the dismissive frown she'd expected, but curiosity. Almost amusement. When he finally spoke, his voice was deeper than she'd anticipated. Smoother. "From today, you live with me." Elena blinked. "I'm sorry, what?" "You heard me." Heat rushed to her cheeks. What kind of butler talked like that? "Sir, I think there's been a misunderstanding. I'm just trying to sell some candy to help." Inside, he stepped back, holding the door wider. "Both of you." Maya buried her face against Elena's neck. Elena's every instinct screamed danger, but something in the man's tone wasn't threatening. It was commanding, yes, but not cruel. And behind his stern expression, she caught a flicker of something unexpected. Loneliness. "Look, I don't know what you think this is," Elena said, "but I'm not." Elena Rodriguez, right? 26 years old. Lives on Maple Street with her daughter Maya. His voice was matter-of-fact, but his eyes never left hers. "You've been selling candies door to door for 3 weeks. Made it to every house on this street except mine." Her blood went cold. "How do you?" "I know things." He glanced at Maya, and his expression softened fractionally. "The little one looks tired. And hungry." As if on cue, Maya's stomach rumbled audibly. Elena's face burned with embarrassment, but she lifted her chin. "We're fine." "Sure you are." He turned and walked into the foyer, clearly expecting them to follow. Over his shoulder, he called, "Mrs. Chun has lunch ready. She makes excellent soup." Elena stood frozen on the doorstep. Every reasonable part of her brain said to run. But Maya was getting heavier in her arms, and the smell drifting from inside, something rich and savory, made her realize they hadn't eaten since yesterday. She stepped inside. The foyer was even more intimidating than the exterior. Marble floors stretched toward a grand staircase that curved upward like something from a fairy tale. Crystal chandeliers cast rainbow patterns on ivory walls lined with oil paintings. Everything gleamed with the kind of cleanliness that required a full staff. "This way," the man said, not looking back. Elena hurried after him, her worn sneakers squeaking against the marble. "Wait, I still don't understand what you want. Are you hiring?" "Because I should tell you, I don't have experience with." "Experience with what?" "Whatever you need help with. Cleaning, maybe? Cooking." She shifted Maya to her other hip. "I'm a hard worker. Very reliable. But I'd need to know the hours, and the pay, and whether I can bring Maya." He stopped so suddenly she almost collided with his back. When he turned, that amused look was back. "You think I'm offering you a job? Aren't you?" For a moment, he just stared at her. Then, impossibly, he smiled. Not a polite, professional smile, but something genuine and warm that transformed his entire face. "Elena Rodriguez," he said, "you are absolutely fascinating." Before she could respond, he was walking again, leading them through a hallway lined with more art than Elena had ever seen outside a museum. They passed a library with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, a sitting room with furniture that looked too expensive to actually sit on, and what might have been a music room. She caught a glimpse of a grand piano through an open door. Finally, they reached a kitchen that was larger than Elena's entire apartment. Granite countertops stretched under gleaming copper pots hanging from an overhead rack. A woman in her 50s looked up from the stove, Asian features, graying hair pulled back in a neat bun, wearing an apron that read "Kiss the Cook" in faded letters. "Mrs. Chun," the man said, "we have guests." Two of them. Mrs. Chin's eyes widened slightly, but she recovered quickly. "Of course, Mr. Pierce. I'll set extra places." "Mr. Pierce?" Elena's mind stuttered. Not the butler, then. But if he wasn't staff? Actually, Pierce continued, Elena will be staying. Indefinitely. She'll need a room prepared, preferably one of the suites on the second floor. Elena nearly dropped Maya. "I'll be what now?" Mrs. Chin raised an eyebrow, but said nothing. She'd clearly learned not to question Mr. Pierce's decisions, no matter how bizarre they seemed. "You can't just. I mean, you don't even know me," Elena sputtered. "I came here to sell candy. Not to what?" Pierce asked mildly. She gestured helplessly at the opulent kitchen, at Mrs. Chun calmly ladling soup into bowls, at the whole impossible situation. "This, whatever this is." "Lunch," Pierce said. He pulled out a chair at the kitchen island. "Sit." Maya perked up at the sight of food, squirming to be put down. Elena's stomach clenched with hunger, but she held her ground. "Mr. Pierce, that is your name, right? I appreciate the offer, but I can't just move in with a stranger. Even if you are." She waved at their surroundings. "Rich. Rich." He repeated the word like he was testing how it sounded. "Yes, I suppose I am that." Mrs. Chin set bowls of steaming vegetable soup on the counter, along with crusty bread that looked homemade. Maya climbed onto a chair and immediately started eating, making little pleased humming sounds. "She's hungry," Pierce observed. "She's fine," Elena said quickly. "When did she last have a proper meal?" The question was quiet, but it hit like a slap. Elena's cheeks burned. "We eat." "I didn't ask if you eat. I asked when she last had a proper meal." Elena's jaw tightened. Who was this man to judge her? So what if things were tight right now? She was doing her best. Maya was fed, clothed, loved. That mattered more than. She looked at her daughter, who had already finished half the bowl and was reaching for the bread with greedy little hands. When was the last time Maya had eaten until she was actually full, instead of just not hungry anymore? 3 days ago, maybe. Before Elena's last client had paid her for the birthday party decorations, $20 that had gone straight to the pharmacist for Maya's inhaler refill. "Elena." Pierce's voice was gentler now. "Sit. Eat. We'll talk after." She wanted to argue, but Maya was giggling at something Mrs. Chun had whispered to her, and the soup smelled incredible, and Elena was so tired of being proud all the time. So tired of pretending everything was fine when it wasn't. She sat. The soup was perfect, rich and savory with vegetables so fresh they must have come from a garden somewhere on the property. Elena tried to eat slowly, to maintain some dignity, but she was hungrier than she'd realized. Hungrier than she'd let herself acknowledge. Pierce ate across from them, occasionally making quiet conversation with Mrs. Chun about household matters. Elena caught fragments. Something about a dinner party tomorrow, a conference call with Tokyo, repairs needed on the pool house. The casual way he discussed these things, like they were perfectly normal parts of daily life, reminded Elena just how different their worlds were. "Mama," Maya said suddenly, "is this our new house?" Elena nearly choked on her soup. "No, baby. We're just visiting." Maya looked disappointed. She'd already finished her bowl and was eyeing the bread basket hopefully. Mrs. Chun, without being asked, cut another thick slice and spread it with butter. "Why not?" Pierce asked. "Why not what? Why isn't this your new house?" Elena stared at him. "Because people don't just move into mansions. Because you don't know anything about us. Because this is insane." "I know you make candy," he said. "Good candy, judging by the reviews on your social media page. I know you've been evicted twice in the past year. I know you're 3 weeks behind on rent, and your daughter has asthma that requires medication you can barely afford." The blood drained from Elena's face. "You investigated me? I researched you. There's a difference. That's even worse." She stood so quickly her chair scraped against the floor. "You can't just. Who gave you the right to?" "Mama." Maya's voice was small, uncertain. "Are you mad?" Elena looked down at her daughter's worried face and forced herself to take a breath. Getting angry wouldn't help. Getting angry never helped. "No." Baby, she said quietly. Mama's not mad. But she was. She was furious. Not just at Pierce, but at the whole situation. At being so desperate that a stranger's charity felt like a lifeline. At living in a world where her daughter's asthma medication cost more than Elena could make in a week of selling handmade candy to people who barely looked at her. Elena, Pierce said. His voice was careful now, like he was approaching a spooked animal. I'm not trying to insult you. Then what are you trying to do? He was quiet for a long moment, studying her face. Outside, she could hear birds singing in whatever elaborate garden surrounded this place. Maya had curled up in her chair, looking sleepy after the first full meal she'd had in days. I'm trying to help, Pierce said finally. Why? Another pause. Longer this time. Because I can. It was such a simple answer, but something in the way he said it made Elena think there was more to it. Something he wasn't saying. People don't just help, she said. Not like this. Not without wanting something. What do you think I want? The question hung in the air between them. Elena's mind raced through possibilities, most of them unpleasant. She'd learned to be suspicious of men who offered help, especially men with power and money. They always wanted something. But looking at Pierce now, at the way he watched Maya with something that might have been wistfulness, at the careful distance he maintained, at the complete lack of threat in his posture, Elena couldn't figure out what his angle was. I don't know, she admitted. Good. Because neither do I. He stood, smoothing down his shirt. Mrs. Chun, could you show Elena and Maya to the Blue Suite? They'll be staying there tonight. Mr. Pierce, Elena started, but he held up a hand. One night, he said. Give me one night to explain. If you want to leave tomorrow, I'll drive you home myself. Elena wanted to say no. Every instinct told her to grab Maya and walk out that massive front door and never look back. This was too much, too strange, too good to be true. But Maya had fallen asleep in her chair, her face peaceful in a way Elena rarely saw anymore. And the bread in her stomach was the first food that had actually satisfied her in weeks. One night, she said. Pierce nodded. One night. Mrs. Chun led them up the grand staircase to the second floor. The Blue Suite turned out to be larger than Elena's entire apartment. A sitting room with a fireplace, a bedroom with a four-poster bed that could have slept 6 people, and a bathroom with a tub the size of a small swimming pool. There are clothes in the closet, Mrs. Chun said, opening doors to reveal a walk-in space filled with women's clothing in various sizes. Mr. Pierce had me stock it a few years ago for guests. They should fit. Elena fingered a silk blouse that probably cost more than her monthly rent. He does this often? Brings home random women. Mrs. Chin's expression gave nothing away. Mr. Pierce has never brought anyone home. Not in the 5 years I've worked here. That stopped Elena cold. Never. Never. After Mrs. Chin left, Elena tucked Maya into the enormous bed and stood by the window, looking out at gardens that seemed to stretch to the horizon. What kind of man lived alone in a place like this? What kind of man saw a struggling woman selling candy door to door and decided to what? Save her? She thought about the way Pierce had looked at Maya, not with pity, but with something gentler. Recognition, maybe. Like he understood what it was to be small and powerless in a big, indifferent world. Down in the foyer, Alexander Pierce stood at the bottom of the grand staircase, one hand resting on the banister. He could hear water running in the pipes. Elena giving Maya a bath, probably. The sound was strange in his house. Domestic. Alive. 4 or 5 years, he'd lived in this mansion surrounded by staff who treated him with professional courtesy and nothing more. Mrs. Chun was kind, but kept appropriate distance. The groundskeepers and housekeepers came and went like ghosts. The house was perfectly maintained, perfectly clean, perfectly empty. Then Elena Rodriguez had appeared at his door with her basket of candy and her fierce pride and her daughter's trusting eyes, and something had shifted. Something he'd thought was dead had stirred to life. He'd been watching her for weeks, though he'd never admit it. Not in a creepy way. He wasn't some stalker. But his office window overlooked the street, and he'd noticed her making her rounds, knocking on doors with decreasing enthusiasm as rejection followed rejection. He'd seen her shoulders slump a little more each day, watched her count coins on the sidewalk before deciding whether to buy Maya an ice cream from the truck that came through the neighborhood. He'd almost called down to his driver to intercept her, to buy her entire basket and send her on her way with enough money to solve her immediate problems. But something had held him back. Something about the set of her shoulders, The way she kept going even when it was obvious she was exhausted and scared. When she'd finally made it to his door, when she'd looked up at him with those bright, determined eyes and asked to sell him candy, he'd made a decision that surprised even him. From today, you live with me. It had sounded insane even as he'd said it. But standing here now, listening to the sounds of life echoing through his house for the first time in years, Alexander thought it might have been the sanest thing he'd ever done. The next morning, Elena awoke to sunlight streaming through windows that faced an honest-to-God rose garden. For a moment, she forgot where she was. The bed was too soft, the room too quiet, the air too clean. Then Maya stirred beside her, and reality came flooding back. She was in a mansion, with a man who'd basically kidnapped her, albeit politely. A man who knew things about her life that she'd never told anyone. She found clothes in the closet that fit surprisingly well. Jeans that weren't worn thin at the knees, a sweater that was soft enough to sleep in. Maya was delighted by the selection of children's clothes, insisting on a dress with sparkles that made her feel like a princess. They made their way downstairs, following the smell of coffee and bacon. In the kitchen, Piers sat at the island with a tablet and a cup of coffee, wearing a dark suit that probably cost more than Elena's car. He looked up when they entered, and something in his expression relaxed. "Good morning," he said. "Sleep well." "Like the dead," Elena admitted. "That bed is ridiculous. Italian. Costs more than most people's cars." She winced. "You don't have to tell me everything costs more than I can afford. I'm aware. That wasn't what I meant." He gestured to the stool across from him. "Coffee." Mrs. Chun appeared as if summoned, setting plates of eggs and bacon in front of them. Maya dove in immediately, but Elena found herself studying Pierce over her coffee cup. "So," she said, "explanation time. What is this really about?" He set down his tablet. "You want the short version or the long one?" "Short first. I'll tell you if I need more details." "I'm lonely. You need help." It seemed like a mutually beneficial arrangement. Elena nearly snorted coffee. "That's your explanation? You're lonely. You asked for the short version. Give me the long one." Pierce was quiet for a moment, watching Maya demolish her breakfast. When he spoke, his voice was careful, measured. "I built my first company when I was 22. Sold it for $40 million when I was 25. Built another one. Sold that for $150 million. Built a third, took it public. Now I have more money than I know what to do with, and a house that's too big for one person." "Sounds terrible," Elena said dryly. "It is, actually." There was no self-pity in his voice, just matter-of-fact acknowledgement. "I work 16-hour days because there's nothing else to do. I travel constantly because staying home reminds me how quiet it is. I haven't had a conversation with someone who wasn't trying to sell me something or get something from me in, God, probably 2 years." Elena studied his face. "And then I showed up selling candy. And then you showed up selling candy." His mouth quirked upward. "Do you know what you said to me yesterday? Before I told you to come inside. I asked if you wanted to buy candy. You called me sir." He leaned forward slightly. "Not Mr. Pierce. Not Alexander. Just sir. Like I was a person doing a job, not a bank account with legs." "You are a person doing a job. I thought you were the butler." "Exactly." Something warm flickered in his eyes. "When was the last time someone treated you like you were just normal?" The question caught Elena off guard. She thought about the way people looked at her when she knocked on their doors, the quick assessment, the dismissive glances, the way they held their purses a little tighter. The way even the social workers at Maya's clinic spoke to her, like being poor made her stupid. "I don't know," she said honestly. 2 days ago, Pierce said, "you were selling candy to the Hendersons 3 houses down. Mrs. Henderson was having a bad day. Her arthritis was acting up, and you sat with her for 20 minutes. You didn't try to sell her anything. You just listened while she complained about her medication costs and her son who never calls. And when you left, you gave Maya one of your candies to take to Mrs. Henderson's granddaughter." Elena's cheeks warmed. "You were watching me? My office overlooks the street. And yes, I was watching. You have no idea how extraordinary you are, do you?" The compliment hit her like a physical thing, warm and unsettling. "I was being polite. You were being kind. There's a difference." Maya had finished eating and was now exploring the kitchen, opening cabinets and examining Mrs. Chin's collection of copper pots. Elena watched her daughter's face light up with curiosity and wonder, and something clenched in her chest. "So what?" she said, looking back at Pierce. "You want to keep us like pets?" The poor woman and her daughter, On display in your mansion? His expression hardened. Is that really what you think of me? I don't know what to think of you. This whole situation is insane. Rich men don't just invite random women to live with them out of the goodness of their hearts. This rich man does. Why? Because I can afford to. Because you deserve better than whatever you're going back to. Because your daughter shouldn't have to watch you skip meals so she can eat. The words hit like arrows, each one finding its mark. Elena's throat tightened. You don't know anything about our life. I know you've lost 12 pounds in the past month. I know Maya's inhaler is 3 days past due for a refill, but you can't afford it. I know you're sleeping on a mattress on the floor because you sold your bed to pay for her emergency room visit last month. Stop. Elena's voice cracked. Just stop. Pierce reached across the counter, but stopped short of touching her hand. Elena, I'm not trying to hurt you, but pretending everything is fine isn't helping anyone. What do you want me to say? That you're right? That I'm a failure as a mother? Tears stung her eyes, but she blinked them back. She would not cry in front of this man. She would not give him that. You're not a failure. You're the opposite of a failure. I'm broke. My daughter is hungry half the time. We're about to be evicted. How is that not failing? Because you haven't given up. His voice was firm, certain. Because you're still fighting. Because you're out there every day trying to build something better for her, even when the odds are stacked against you. Elena laughed, but it came out bitter. Building something better? I'm selling candy door to door like some kind of entrepreneur, Pierce finished. You're an entrepreneur. You identified a market need, created a product, developed a distribution strategy. The only difference between you and me is that I had capital to start with. The comparison was so absurd that Elena almost laughed again. But something in Pierce's expression stopped her. He wasn't mocking her. He was serious. You really see it that way? I see it the way it is. You're smart, determined, and willing to work harder than anyone I know. You just need an opportunity. And you're going to give me one? Out of the kindness of your heart. Pierce smiled, and for the first time since she'd met him, it looked almost boyish. Actually, I was hoping you'd give me one. What? I have a dinner party tomorrow night. 12 people, all business contacts. Mrs. Chin usually handles the catering, but she mentioned wanting help. He gestured toward Elena's candy basket, which somehow had made its way onto the kitchen counter. Those candies of yours are incredible. Professional quality. I was thinking, maybe you could handle dessert. Elena blinked. You want me to cater your dinner party? Just dessert. But yes. He named a figure that made Elena's head spin. If it goes well, I know other people who host similar events. Consider it a trial run. It was a lifeline, and they both knew it. More money than Elena had seen in months, and the possibility of real clients. Rich clients who could afford to pay well. But it also meant staying. At least for tomorrow night. Maybe longer. I'll need supplies, she said finally. Ingredients, equipment. I can't make professional quality desserts in a regular kitchen. Pierce's smile widened. This isn't a regular kitchen. He was right, of course. Over the next few hours, Elena discovered that Pierce's kitchen was better equipped than most professional bakeries. There was a stand mixer that cost more than her monthly rent, ovens with precise temperature controls, and a walk-in pantry stocked with ingredients she'd only dreamed of using. Mrs. Chun proved to be an invaluable partner, suggesting combinations and techniques with the easy confidence of someone who'd been cooking for decades. Maya appointed herself official taste tester, providing seriously detailed critiques of each sample. This one needs more chocolate, she announced, licking a spoon clean. And maybe sparkles. Edible glitter, Elena mused. That could work. By afternoon, they had a plan. Individual chocolate torts with salted caramel centers, garnished with gold leaf and accompanied by house-made ice cream. Elegant enough for Pierce's wealthy friends, but with enough comfort food appeal to actually satisfy. Elena found herself lost in the work, the familiar rhythm of measuring and mixing and tasting. This was what she loved about cooking, the way disparate ingredients came together to create something greater than the sum of their parts. The way a perfect dessert could make someone's entire evening better. You're happy, Pierce observed, appearing in the kitchen doorway. Elena looked up from the ganache she was stirring. I'm working. Same thing for you. It was true, she realized. Even when she'd been struggling, even when selling candies door to door felt humiliating, she'd loved the actual creation part. The moment when sugar and butter and chocolate transformed into something beautiful. What makes you happy? She asked. Pierce considered the question seriously. Building things. Solving problems. Taking something broken and fixing it. Is that what you think you're doing with me? Fixing something broken? No. His answer was immediate, certain. You're not broken, Elena. You're just underutilized. The word stuck with her as she continued working. Underutilized. Like she was a resource that hadn't been properly deployed. It should have been insulting, but somehow it wasn't. Because for the first time in years, someone was seeing her potential instead of her problems. That evening, after Maya had been tucked into the enormous bed with a story and a glass of warm milk, Elena found Pierce in his office. It was a masculine room, all dark wood and leather, with floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the gardens. He sat behind a desk that was large enough to sleep on, typing on a laptop that looked like it cost more than Elena's car. "Working late?" she asked from the doorway. He looked up, and something in his expression softened when he saw her. "Always. Come in." The office was intimidating, filled with awards and photographs of Pierce shaking hands with people Elena didn't recognize, but who looked important. But there was something else, too. A loneliness that seemed to permeate the space despite its obvious wealth. "This is where you spend most of your time?" she asked, settling into one of the leather chairs across from his desk. 16 hours a day most days. That's not living. That's just existing. Pierce closed his laptop. Says the woman who works every waking hour trying to keep her daughter fed and housed. That's different. I'm working towards something. So am I. What? He was quiet for a long moment, staring out the dark windows. I don't know anymore. More money, I guess. Bigger companies. Better quarterly returns. He looked back at her. Not very inspiring, is it? Elena studied his face. The sharp cheekbones, the eyes that were too serious for someone who couldn't be much older than 35. When was the last time you did something just because it made you happy? Yesterday, he said without hesitation. When I told you to come inside. The simple honesty of it took her breath away. Pierce. Alexander, he said. My name is Alexander. Alexander. She tested the name, liked the way it felt on her tongue. Why me? Really? There are probably hundreds of women who'd be happy to. I don't know. Decorate your mansion and attend your dinner parties. I don't want someone to decorate my mansion. I want. He trailed off, seeming to struggle with the words. What? I want to hear someone laughing in the morning when I come down for coffee. I want to find toys scattered around the living room. I want Maya to tell me about her day over dinner, the way she did tonight. His voice was quiet, almost vulnerable. I want to feel like I'm living in a home instead of a museum. Elena's chest tightened. And you think we can give you that? I think you already have. The next evening, Elena stood in Pierce's dining room, surveying the table she'd spent hours perfecting. Crystal glasses caught the light from an overhead chandelier, and the individual chocolate torts were arranged like small works of art at each place setting. Everything looked perfect. She was terrified. They're going to love it, Mrs. Chen said, adjusting a final place setting. I've never seen desserts so beautiful. Elena smoothed down her dress, black silk that she'd found in the closet, elegant enough to blend in with Pierce's wealthy friends, but simple enough not to draw attention. What if they don't? What if I've completely misread what rich people want? Then they have terrible taste, Maya announced from the doorway. She was supposed to be in bed, but she'd convinced Mrs. Chun to let her see the final setup. Your desserts are the best in the whole world. Elena smiled despite her nerves. Thank you, baby. Pierce appeared behind Maya, dressed in a tuxedo that made Elena's mouth go dry. The guests are arriving. You ready? As ready as I'll ever be. The next hour passed in a blur of introductions and small talk. Pierce's friends were exactly what Elena had expected. Polished, sophisticated people who spoke casually about their vacation homes and their children's private schools. They were polite to her, but she could feel their curiosity. Who was this woman Pierce had brought into his home? Elena stayed in the kitchen during dinner, putting finishing touches on the desserts and trying not to pace. Through the service window, she could hear laughter and conversation, the clink of expensive silverware against fine china. They're having a good time, Mrs. Chen observed. Good for them. You should join them. Elena shook her head. I'm the help tonight, remember? You're not the help. You're Alexander's. What would you call it? That was the question, wasn't it? What was she? Not a girlfriend. They'd known each other for 2 days. Not an employee, despite what she was doing tonight. Something else. Something undefined. When it was time to serve dessert, Elena carried the torts out herself. The dining room fell quiet as she set them down, and she felt 12 pairs of eyes examining her work. Then someone took a bite. Oh my God, a woman in diamonds breathed. This is incredible. Where did you find this chef, Alexander? A man in his 60s asked. I need her number. Elena caught Pierce's eye across the table. He was smiling, not the polite smile he'd been wearing all evening, but the real one she'd glimpsed in the kitchen. Proud, pleased, satisfied. Elena, he said, why don't you tell everyone about your business? Her cheeks warmed. It's not really a business yet. More of a side project. She's being modest, Pierce said. Elena creates artisanal candies and desserts. All handmade, all original recipes. She's been developing her client base through direct sales. The way he described her work made it sound important. Professional, like something worth taking seriously. Do you have a card? The woman in diamonds asked. Elena's stomach dropped. She'd never thought to make business cards. Who would she give them to? She's working on branding, Pierce said smoothly. But I can connect you directly. The rest of the evening passed like a dream. 3 people asked for Elena's contact information. 2 wanted to hire her for upcoming events. 1 offered to introduce her to a friend who owned a high-end catering company. By the time the last guest left, Elena was dizzy with possibility. That, Pierce said, loosening his bow tie, was incredible. The desserts were good. The desserts were perfect. But I was talking about you. He moved closer, close enough that Elena could smell his cologne. You handled those people like you'd been doing it your whole life. I was terrified the entire time. Couldn't tell. Elena laughed, giddy with relief and exhaustion and something else she couldn't quite name. I can't believe they actually want to hire me. I can. You're brilliant, Elena. You just needed the right stage. She looked up at him, at his face soft with something that might have been affection, and felt the ground shift beneath her feet. This wasn't just about business anymore. Hadn't been since that first morning, maybe. Alexander, she said softly. Yeah. Thank you. He reached up, brushing a strand of hair away from her face. His fingers were warm against her cheek. Thank you for what? For seeing something in me that I couldn't see in myself. Elena. His voice was rough, uncertain. I need you to know something. What? This isn't charity. What I'm offering you, what I'm asking for, it's not charity. I know. Do you? Because I need you to understand that I'm not trying to save you. You don't need saving. You need opportunity, and I need. He paused, searching for words. I need what you and Maya bring to this place. The life you bring. The warmth. Elena's heart hammered against her ribs. What are you saying? I'm saying stay. Not as a guest, not as an employee. As. He smiled, that boyish expression she was learning to love. As family, maybe. Alexander. Mama. They turned to find Maya, standing in the doorway, clutching her stuffed elephant. Her hair was messy from sleep, and she looked impossibly small in her princess pajamas. What's wrong, baby? Elena asked, immediately moving toward her daughter. I had a bad dream, Maya whispered. Can I sleep with you? Elena's heart clenched. Maya had been having nightmares more frequently lately, probably stress from all the upheaval in their lives. Of course, sweetheart. Alexander watched as Elena scooped Maya into her arms, murmuring soft reassurances. The sight of them together, Elena's protective tenderness, Maya's absolute trust, did something to his chest. Made it tight and warm and unfamiliar. Mr. Alexander? Maya said suddenly, looking at him over Elena's shoulder. Do you have bad dreams too? The question caught him off guard. Sometimes. Mama says when you have bad dreams, it means your brain is trying to fix something that's scary. Are you scared of something? Out of the mouths of babes. Alexander met Elena's eyes over Maya's head, saw something soft and understanding there. Yeah, he said quietly. I think maybe I am. What are you scared of? Elena shifted Maya slightly. Baby, that's a very personal question. It's okay, Alexander said. He moved closer until he was standing near enough to touch them both. I'm scared of being alone forever. Of living in this big house with no one to share it with. Maya considered this seriously. Well, you don't have to be alone now. We're here. Maya, Elena started. Right, Mr. Alexander? We can stay and keep you company. And Mama can make you desserts every day, and I can show you my drawings, and we can watch movies together on the big TV downstairs. Alexander felt something shift in his chest, like a lock clicking open. I'd like that very much. See, Mama. Maya beamed at Elena. Mr. Alexander needs us. Just like we needed him. Elena's eyes filled with tears she was clearly trying not to shed. It's not that simple, baby. Why not? It was such an innocent question, but it hung in the air between them like a challenge. Why not? Why couldn't it be that simple? Because, Elena said carefully, Mr. Alexander and I are still figuring things out. But you like him, right? And he likes you. Elena's cheeks flushed. Maya, I do like your mama, Alexander said, his eyes never leaving Elena's face. Very much. And she likes you too. I can tell because she smiles different when she looks at you. Elena buried her face in Maya's hair, embarrassed. But Alexander caught the small smile tugging at her lips. Different how? He asked, curious despite himself. Like when she looks at me, Maya said matter-of-factly. Like you make her happy. The simple observation hit Alexander like a physical blow. When was the last time anyone had looked at him like he made them happy? When was the last time he'd looked at anyone that way? Maya, Elena said softly, why don't you go get ready for bed? I'll be up in a few minutes. Maya nodded and kissed Elena's cheek, then surprised Alexander by reaching out and patting his arm. Good night, Mr. Alexander. Don't have any more scary dreams, okay? I'll try not to. After Maya disappeared upstairs, Elena and Alexander stood in the dining room, surrounded by the remnants of the evening's success. The silence stretched between them, comfortable but charged with possibility. She's right, you know, Alexander said finally. About what? You do make me happy. Happier than I've been in. God, years maybe. Elena looked down at her hands. Alexander, this is all happening so fast. 2 days ago, I didn't even know your name. So how do I know this is real? How do I know you won't wake up tomorrow and decide you've made a huge mistake? Alexander stepped closer, close enough to see the gold flecks in her brown eyes. How do you know anything is real? How did you know Maya would be the best thing that ever happened to you? How did you know you'd love her before she was even born? That's different, is it? Sometimes the most important decisions happen in an instant. Sometimes you just know. Elena searched his face. And you know? I know I've been sleepwalking through my life for years. I know that 2 days ago, a beautiful woman showed up at my door selling candy, and suddenly I remembered what it felt like to be alive. He reached out, cupping her cheek in his palm. I know I want to wake up every morning and hear you laughing with Maya in the kitchen. I know I want to help you build the business you're capable of building. I know I want to be part of your story. What if it doesn't work? What if we're too different? What if it does work? What if we're exactly what each other needs? Elena leaned into his touch, and Alexander felt something settle in his chest. Something that had been restless and seeking for as long as he could remember. I'm scared, she whispered. So am I. You? You're not scared of anything. Alexander laughed softly. I'm terrified. I'm terrified that you'll realize what a mess I am underneath all this. He gestured at the opulent room around them. I'm terrified that I don't know how to be part of a family. I'm terrified that I'll disappoint Maya, or you, or both of you. Alexander. But I'm more scared of letting you walk away. I'm more scared of going back to the way things were before you knocked on my door. Elena was quiet for a long moment, and Alexander could practically see her thinking, weighing pros and cons, calculating risks and benefits. It was one of the things he was learning to love about her, the way her mind worked, careful and analytical even in the midst of emotion. If we do this, she said finally, if we really try this, I need you to understand something. What? I won't be your charity case. I won't be the poor woman you rescued out of the goodness of your heart. If we're partners, in business, in life, whatever this becomes, we're equals. Elena, you've been my equal since the moment you walked through that door. Money doesn't change that, doesn't it? When I can't contribute equally to household expenses, when Maya needs something I can't afford, when your friends look at me like I don't belong. Stop. Alexander's voice was firm. First of all, my friends can go to hell if they don't treat you with respect. Second, partnership isn't about equal financial contribution. It's about equal value. And what you bring to this. He shook his head, searching for words. Elena, you bring more value to my life than all the money I've ever made. That's a pretty speech, but it's not a speech. It's the truth. He moved closer until there was barely any space between them. You want to know what you contribute? You make Maya laugh every day. You turn a house into a home. You see potential where other people see problems. You create beauty out of simple ingredients. You make me remember why I started building companies in the first place, not for the money, but for the satisfaction of creating something meaningful. Elena's eyes were bright with unshed tears. Alexander, marry me. The words hung in the air between them like a challenge. Elena blinked, certain she'd misheard. What? Marry me, he repeated, his voice steady and sure. I know it's crazy. I know we've known each other for 2 days. But I also know that some decisions don't need months of deliberation. Some decisions just feel right. You're insane. Probably. But I'm also serious. Elena stared at him, looking for some sign that he was joking or testing her or playing some elaborate game. But his expression was completely open, completely sincere. People don't get married after 2 days, she said weakly. People don't invite strangers to live in their mansions either. But here we are. Alexander, I'm not asking you to answer right now. I'm not asking you to plan a wedding tomorrow. I'm just asking you to think about it. To consider the possibility that sometimes the universe puts exactly the right person in exactly the right place at exactly the right time. Elena felt like the world was tilting beneath her feet. Marriage. To a man she'd known for 48 hours. It should have been the most ridiculous thing she'd ever heard. So why did it feel like the most natural thing in the world? I need to check on Maya, she said, stepping back. Alexander nodded, but his eyes never left her face. Elena. Yeah. Whatever you decide. I meant what I said. About you belonging here. About this being your home. Even if you say no to everything else. I want you to know that you and Maya have a place here for as long as you want it. The offer was generous beyond belief, but Elena could see the vulnerability underneath it. He was giving her an out, a way to stay without committing to anything more than friendship and convenience. Thank you, she said softly. She made it halfway up the grand staircase before she had to stop, gripping the banister as her legs went weak. Marriage. To Alexander Pierce. A man who owned more in art than most people made in a lifetime. A man who'd looked at her struggling to sell candy door to door and seen not a charity case, but a partner. A man who made her feel like she could conquer the world. In the blue suite, Maya was already asleep again, curled up in the center of the enormous bed with her elephant tucked under her arm. Elena sat on the edge of the mattress, watching her daughter's peaceful face in the moonlight streaming through the windows. What do you think, baby? She whispered. Should we stay with Mr. Alexander? Should we make this our home? Maya stirred slightly, a small smile crossing her sleeping features. Love you, Mama. Love you too, sweetheart. Elena lay down beside her daughter, staring up at the ceiling. 2 days ago, she'd been counting coins to buy Maya an ice cream cone. Tonight, she had 3 potential clients lined up and a proposal of marriage from a billionaire. It was like something out of a fairy tale, except fairy tales didn't usually involve custody battles and eviction notices and the constant, grinding worry about whether you'd be able to pay for your child's medication. But maybe that was what made this real. Maybe what made this more than fantasy was that Alexander had seen all of that, the struggles, the fear, the desperation, and hadn't been scared away. Maybe what made this love instead of rescue was that he needed her as much as she needed him. The next morning, Elena woke to the sound of laughter drifting up from downstairs. Maya's giggle, bright and musical, mixed with a deeper chuckle she was learning to associate with Alexander. She found them in the kitchen, flour dusted across the granite counters, and what looked like the beginnings of pancakes on the griddle. Alexander was wearing jeans and a t-shirt, the first time she'd seen him in anything casual, and there was flour in his dark hair. Mama, Maya called when she spotted Elena in the doorway. Mr. Alexander is teaching me to make pancakes. Look, I can flip them. She demonstrated, sending a slightly lopsided pancake sailing through the air. Alexander caught it neatly in the pan, grinning like he'd just executed a perfect business merger. Very impressive, Elena said. Accepting the cup of coffee, Mrs. Chen handed her. How long have you two been up? Since 6, Alexander said. Maya mentioned she'd never made pancakes from scratch, so we made a huge mess, Maya finished cheerfully. But they taste really good. Try one. Elena accepted a plate of perfectly golden pancakes, trying to reconcile this relaxed, flour-dusted man with the sophisticated businessman who'd served 12-course dinners to millionaires the night before. These are incredible, she said after the first bite. Family recipe, Alexander said. My grandmother taught me when I was about Maya's age. You have family? Elena asked, then immediately felt stupid. Of course he had family. Everyone had family somewhere. Had. My grandmother raised me after my parents died. She's been gone about 10 years now. His expression grew distant for a moment, then brightened as Maya tugged on his shirt. What do you think, Maya? Should we add chocolate chips to the next batch? Yes. And sprinkles. Absolutely no sprinkles on pancakes, Elena said firmly. Chocolate chips are acceptable. Sprinkles are where I draw the line. Maya pouted, but it was clearly for show. She was having too much fun to be genuinely upset about anything. After breakfast, Alexander disappeared into his office for a conference call with London, leaving Elena to help Maya explore the mansion's various rooms and gardens. It was like touring a museum, except they were allowed to touch everything. In the library, Maya spent an hour examining the leather-bound books, most of which were far too advanced for her reading level. In the music room, she was enchanted by the grand piano, pecking out simple melodies with one finger while Elena watched from a nearby chair. Does Mr. Alexander play? Maya asked. I don't know. We should ask him. Can you play, Mama? Elena smiled. A little. My mother taught me when I was your age. Maya's eyes lit up. Play something. Elena hadn't touched a piano in years. There'd never been money for lessons for Maya, never space in their tiny apartments for even a keyboard. But her fingers remembered the basics, and she found herself playing a simple melody she'd learned as a child. Beautiful. Elena looked up to find Alexander standing in the doorway, his expression soft and pleased. I didn't know you played, he said. I don't really. Just a few simple songs my mother taught me. She taught herself guitar too, Maya said proudly. But she had to sell it when I got sick. Elena's cheeks warmed with embarrassment, but Alexander's expression grew serious. You sold your guitar? Maya needed nebulizer treatments. Insurance didn't cover the equipment. Alexander was quiet for a moment, something working in his expression. Then he sat down beside Elena on the piano bench, his shoulder brushing hers. Teach me, he said. What? The song you were just playing. Teach me. Alexander, you don't. Please. There was something in his voice, something vulnerable and hopeful, that made Elena nod. She positioned his fingers on the keys, guiding him through the simple melody. He was a quick learner, picking up the rhythm and finger positions with the same focused intensity he probably brought to business deals. Maya appointed herself conductor, waving her arms dramatically and calling out encouragement. More feeling, Mr. Alexander. Music has to have feeling. Alexander laughed, playing with exaggerated emotion that made Maya giggle. But when he looked at Elena, when their eyes met over the keys, the laughter faded into something deeper. Elena, he said softly, have you thought about what we talked about last night? Maya looked between them curiously. What did you talk about? Grown-up things, Elena said quickly. Boring stuff? Alexander added, winking at Maya. Nothing as important as piano lessons. But his eyes stayed on Elena's face, questioning and hopeful and patient. That afternoon, while Maya napped in the blue suite, Elena found herself wandering the mansion's gardens. They were even more elaborate than they'd looked from the windows, formal rose beds giving way to wildflower meadows, walking paths that led to hidden gazebos and reflecting pools. She found Alexander in what looked like a vegetable garden, of all places, pulling weeds with methodical precision. He'd changed into old jeans and a faded t-shirt, and there was dirt under his fingernails. This is unexpected, Elena said. Alexander looked up, shading his eyes against the sun. What is? The billionaire gardener thing. It's very domestic. My grandmother's influence again. She believed everyone should know how to grow their own food. He gestured at the neat rows of tomatoes and peppers. Most of what we eat comes from here, actually. Mrs. Chun plans the menus around what's in season. Elena walked between the rows, examining the healthy plants and perfectly mulched beds. You do this yourself? I have help with the bigger stuff, but yeah, I find it centering, I guess. Reminds me that some things can't be rushed or forced or bought. They just take time and patience and care. The metaphor wasn't lost on Elena. Is that your approach to everything? Not everything. Sometimes I'm impatient. Sometimes I see something I want and I go after it immediately. Consequences be damned. He was looking at her as he said it, and Elena felt heat rise in her cheeks. Alexander. Elena, I need to ask you something, and I need you to answer honestly. Her heart began to race. What? Last night, when I asked you to marry me, was I completely out of line? Did I scare you? Elena considered the question, trying to separate her feelings from her rational thoughts. You surprised me. That's not what I asked. You didn't scare me. But you did not scare me either. She sat down on a nearby garden bench, and Alexander joined her, careful to leave space between them. I've been taking care of myself and Maya for so long. The idea of trusting someone else with our well-being is terrifying. I understand that. Do you? Because I'm not sure you do. Elena turned to face him fully. You've been successful at everything you've ever tried. You have money, power, influence. If things don't work out between us, you'll be fine. You'll go back to your 16-hour work days and your empty mansion and your profitable companies. And you think I'd be happy with that? I think you'd survive it. But if this doesn't work out, Maya and I. She trailed off, unable to finish the thought. You think I'd throw you out? If we tried a relationship and it failed, you think I'd put you and Maya back on the street? I think people change their minds. I think good intentions don't always survive real life. Alexander was quiet for a long moment, staring out at the vegetable garden he'd planted with his own hands. When he spoke, his voice was careful and measured. My parents died in a car accident when I was 8. Drunk driver ran a red light. He paused, his jaw tightening slightly. My grandmother took me in, but she was already in her 70s. She did her best, but she worried constantly about what would happen to me if something happened to her. Elena's chest tightened. Alexander. She used to lie awake at night, planning, making lists of relatives who might take me, contingency plans for my education, trust funds to make sure I'd be provided for. She was terrified that I'd end up alone and scared and abandoned. Did you end up alone? Alexander smiled, but it was sad around the edges. Yeah, eventually. She died when I was 20, right before I started my first company. And I realized that all her planning, all her worry, it couldn't protect me from the basic fact that everyone you love eventually leaves. Elena felt tears prick at her eyes. That's not true, isn't it? People leave, Elena. They die, or they get scared, or they find someone better, or they just change their minds, like you said. It's the one constant in life. Then why are you asking me to stay? If you believe everyone leaves eventually, why do you want me and Maya here? Alexander looked at her, and his expression was more open and vulnerable than she'd ever seen it. Because maybe, for once, I'd rather risk the pain of losing someone than guarantee the pain of never having them at all. The simple honesty of it took Elena's breath away. This wasn't the polished businessman who'd negotiated billion-dollar deals. This was just Alexander, scared and hopeful and brave enough to offer his heart to two people who had every reason to say no. Maya would be devastated if this didn't work out, Elena said quietly. She's already attached to you. She talks about you like your family. She is family. You both are. Whether you marry me or not, whether we make this romantic or keep it platonic, you're family now. I meant what I said last night. You have a home here for as long as you want it. You can't promise that. People's feelings change. Circumstances change. Some things don't change. Alexander shifted closer on the bench, close enough that Elena could see the gold flecks in his gray eyes. My feelings for you won't change. My commitment to Maya's well-being won't change. My need for both of you in my life won't change. How can you be so sure? Because I've spent 34 years learning the difference between wanting something and needing it. Because I've built a fortune on being able to evaluate investments. And you and Maya, you're the best investment I could ever make. Elena laughed despite herself. That's possibly the least romantic thing you could have said. Fine. Because you make me laugh. Because Maya makes me remember what it's like to see the world as an adventure instead of a series of problems to solve. Because when you play piano, you close your eyes and smile like music is the most beautiful thing in the world. Because you cry at animated movies, but you're fierce as a lioness when someone threatens your daughter. Because you make the best chocolate torts I've ever tasted, and you give away half your candy to lonely old ladies, and you somehow make a mansion feel like a home just by being in it. Elena stared at him, her heart hammering against her ribs. Alexander. Because I love you, he said simply. I know it's too soon. I know it's crazy, but I love you. I love Maya. I love the life we could build together. The words hung in the air between them like a gift. Elena had heard, I love you before, from Maya's father, who'd disappeared the moment he learned she was pregnant. From men who'd wanted something from her, who'd mistaken desperation for affection. But this felt different. This felt like truth. I love you too, she whispered. Alexander's face lit up like sunrise. Yeah. Which terrifies me, by the way. But yes. He reached for her hands, threading their fingers together. So, is that a yes to the marriage proposal too? Elena looked down at their joined hands, his clean and manicured, hers still bearing faint scars from years of hard work. They shouldn't have fit together, but somehow they did. Ask me again, she said. What? Ask me again. Properly this time. Alexander smiled, the boyish expression that made her heart skip. Then, to her complete surprise, he slid off the bench and dropped to one knee right there in the dirt between the tomato plants. Elena Rodriguez, he said, his voice steady and sure. Will you marry me? Will you let me spend the rest of my life making you and Maya happy? Will you help me turn this house into a home, and this lonely rich guy into a family man? Elena looked down at him, this powerful man kneeling in the garden dirt, offering her everything she'd never dared to dream of. In the distance, she could hear Maya's laughter drifting from the house, bright and joyful and trusting. Yes, she said. Yes, Alexander Pierce. I'll marry you. 6 months later, Elena stood at the top of the grand staircase, looking down at the foyer filled with wedding guests. The ceremony had been small, just Mrs. Chun, a few of Alexander's business associates who'd become genuine friends, and Maya, who'd insisted on being both flower girl and ring bearer. Elena's dress was simple but elegant, chosen from the same boutique where Alexander had taken her shopping for proper business attire after her catering business had taken off. Because it had taken off spectacularly. Word of her desserts had spread through Alexander's social circle and beyond, and she now had more clients than she could handle. She'd hired 2 assistants and was looking at commercial kitchen space. Alexander had offered to buy her whatever facility she wanted, but Elena had insisted on securing her own business loans. Some things, she'd explained, she needed to do herself. Maya appeared beside her, resplendent in a purple dress with enough sparkles to satisfy any 5-year-old's dreams. Ready, Mama? Elena looked down at her daughter, happier and healthier than she'd ever been, her asthma well-controlled thanks to the best medical care money could buy, and felt her heart swell with gratitude. Ready, baby. They walked down the grand staircase together, toward Alexander waiting at the bottom. He was wearing the same tuxedo he'd worn the night of that first dinner party, but his expression was completely different. No polite social smile now, just pure joy and love and anticipation. When Elena reached him, when she placed her hand in his and felt his fingers close around hers, she thought about that day 6 months ago when she'd stood outside these gates with her basket of candy and her desperate hope. Can I sell you a candy, sir? She'd asked. From today, you live with me, he'd replied. Neither of them had known they were negotiating the terms of forever. Neither of them had understood that sometimes the most important transactions happen not in boardrooms or banks, but on doorsteps, between strangers who recognize something essential in each other. As they exchanged vows in the foyer of the mansion that had become their home, as Maya beamed at them from the front row, Elena realized that Alexander had been right about one thing. Sometimes the universe did put exactly the right person in exactly the right place at exactly the right time. And sometimes, if you were very lucky, that person looked at your handmade candy and saw not a desperate woman selling sweets door to door, but a brilliant entrepreneur who just needed the right opportunity. Sometimes they saw not a charity case, but a partner. Sometimes they saw not a stranger, but family. From today, Alexander murmured as he kissed his new wife, we live together. Maya cheered from the front row, and Elena laughed against Alexander's lips, and somewhere in the mansion's many rooms, Mrs. Chun was probably crying happy tears into her apron. It was, Elena thought, exactly the kind of ending that made all the difficult beginnings worthwhile. If you made it to the end, please like the video and subscribe to our channel. It truly means the world to us. See you in the next one.